welcome back to Sacred Vedic Astrology. My name is Samantha, and I'm so blessed and so lucky to be a professional Vedic sidereal astrologer. So, this is going to be our first chart analysis of 2025, and I'm really excited to go into a really deep dive into Vedic astrology analysis in this video. So I want to look into Justin Baldoni's Vedic astrological chart and unravel and understand what is going to cause the energy of some sort of fall from grace in the public transit-wise. Also, what has caused him to reach such heightened success and fame and such strong energy towards all things creative and artistic in this lifetime as well too. Whenever we have the chart of someone famous, we're obviously going to have a very powerful and success-producing Vedic astrological chart, right? I work with a lot of clients that, just kind of are living their sort of normal lives, and you don't always see these like super potent, super powerful astrological charts, so it's pretty rare to see them. And when you do see it, it's usually someone who is very successful, very famous, and vastly talented as well too. So it's always really fun for me as a professional astrologer to analyze really powerful Vedic astrological charts, because I'm like, wow, like this is just so potent. So I want to preface this by saying I'm not taking any sort of sides in this video. I wasn't there. I don't have any proof or evidence of what was going on, but what I am going to do in this video is astrologically analyze and understand like what is going on in Justin's energy that might have triggered this to happen, what's going on in his birth chart plus transits, because he definitely has the chart of someone who is vastly creative, vastly successful, meant to be famous, meant to be an artist, meant to be a actor, meant to be a performer, meant to be a podcaster, meant to be a writer, meant to be a healer, all of the things that he does. But also his biggest detriment in his Vedic astrology chart is his ego issues. So if I was analyzing what happened from a Vedic astrological perspective, I would come to the conclusion that Justin has very strong beliefs, very strong ideologies, very strong opinionated ideas in his creative work. And what can happen when someone is that set on their ideas and their viewpoints and their beliefs and their creative ideas, especially as a director, it's going to cause some ego issues and some clashes in the workplace, right? That's just going to happen. So I would see this as something where, he's vastly talented and creative and intelligent, but he probably got really stuck and caught up in some sort of like ego trip or some sort of power dynamic struggle, where he really wanted his vision to be seen in a certain way, and I'm assuming it was kind of triggering other people in the workplace is how I would, see that astrologically speaking. So yeah, it's going to be really fun to do a in-depth chart analysis into his chart, because I've always really liked Justin, and I just feel like I understand like his energy in terms of his strong philosophies and his strong sort of spiritual beliefs and his feelings of wanting to improve in this lifetime and wanting to heal, and that's that strong Jupiter energy, which we'll get into in this chart. So I'm not taking any side. I'm not saying I know exactly what happened, but I think it will be very interesting to analyze from a Vedic astrological perspective of his birth chart and also his transits and his Dasha sequence to unravel what was going on astrologically to trigger this sort of fall from grace and this issue with the public, issue with work, issue with partnerships. It's all there in the Vedic astrology chart and transits, as always. It's always there, guys. It's never going to not be there. There's nothing more real than astrology. It's not a question of like, is astrology real? It's a question of, do we know how to actually properly read and analyze it? So yeah, so we're going to go into a really in-depth chart analysis, probably one of the most deep dives I've done into a Vedic astrology chart and transits plus dashas. So if you guys are students of Jyotisha, which just means that you feel called to study Vedic astrology, then you're going to learn a lot from this and really enjoy this in-depth chart analysis. Let's get right into it and let's pull up Justin's Vedic astrological chart to unravel what is going on astrologically in this situation. All right, guys, so here we have Justin's Vedic astrological chart pulled up, and this is such a powerful 5th house. This is such a powerful 10th house. So let's start unraveling a few things. Okay, so the first thing I want to look into is what is causing this like insane amount of notoriety and creativity and success in his career, right? Because it's one thing to see the chart of an artist. It's another thing to see the chart of someone who's going to be vastly successful in the arts. That's a whole different story, right? Like those are two very different scenarios. So in Justin's chart, he has Rahu in the 10th house, okay? So Rahu in the 10th on its own can give that larger than life career, it can give public recognition, it can give a career that is very successful in this lifetime. Why? Because Rahu is what our soul is evolving towards, and the 10th house is the house of career. So Rahu is also heightened energy, it's larger than life, it's the material world, it's worldly success. So K2 is something that is more Moshka-like, right? K2 is like a little bit of that spiritual energy, something we've unraveled in past life, something we've already understood. And then Rahu is what we're learning to achieve and acquire on the material. Rahu is more so the material world, K2 is more so that Moshka spiritual world. So someone has Rahu in the 10th house, it means that they can have that worldly success. Okay, it's in that 10th house of career and public image. Rahu in the 10th can also show that someone is very innovative in their work, in their career. They can have some connection to foreign lands, foreign cultures, but also they can have some sort of success in technology as well too. Okay, so if you see Rahu in the 10th house on its own, someone can have career success if their 10th house lord is powerful, if they don't have a bunch of malefic aspects onto their 10th house, all right? So there we have Rahu in the 10th, and let's follow the dispositor to see how his 10th house lord is performing. So because he has Rahu in the 10th in Taurus, it means that his 10th house lord is Venus, right? Because Venus rules Taurus. So 10th house lord, let's follow that 10th house dispositor down to Venus, which goes into his 5th house. So a few very interesting things about 10th house lord in the 5th house. One, the 5th house is creativity and artistic talent. Two, the 5th house is purva punya, or good past life karma. So if we see a house get disposited by the 5th house, it means that they've had some sort of good past life karma that has built up over time and can give them success in that house dispositor, right? So 10th house of career gets disposited by the 5th house of creativity, the artistic expression, the mind, investments, children, and teaching are all those themes of that 5th house, okay? So we have Rahu in the 10th giving a heightened career and success. Let's follow dispositor. 10th house lord is Venus in the 5th. Not only is it Venus in the 5th, it's also Venus conjunct Jupiter in its own sign in the 5th. And conjunct Mercury. So we see 3 benefic planets in the 5th house. Okay, there's only 4 benefics in astrology. Okay, so to have 3 out of 4 benefics in one house is vastly powerful. I mean, it's pretty insane. Like, I don't think I've ever even seen a 5th house this powerful. Actually, I've seen it one other time in someone I know's chart, and that person is a really gifted and talented artist as well too. So if you see 3 benefics in the 5th house, especially conjunct Jupiter in its own sign, this is the arts, this is creativity, this is expression, but it's also teaching, it's also children, and it's also investments as well too. So all of those things are going to go really well for Justin Baldoni in this lifetime because he has such a benefic 5th house, okay? Yes, we have Saturn hitting it, so the one sort of malefic influence we get there is Saturn on that aspect of the 5th house. So Saturn goes 1, 2, 3, it's aspecting all those planets, but let me say it like this. If we have 3 benefics in the 5th house, Jupiter in its own sign conjuncting 2 other benefics, and then Saturn happens to hit it, we're just going to get the energy of Saturn, of hard work and drive, and more so the energy of motivation on all of those benefic planets. So Saturn hitting such a powerful 5th house is not going to harm it that much. It's just going to bring an energy of drive and motivation, perhaps some insecurity issues and, issues around confidence can come up for him in his creative career for sure with Saturn's aspect, but it's not going to be harming it that much because we have 3 benefics in that 5th house, and the 5th house lord is in the 5th house, disposited by Jupiter in its own sign. So this is a powerful 5th house. I mean, nothing can really harm it too much, okay? So this is a really, really powerhouse in his chart. I mean, this 5th house is so, so strong, okay? So let's break it down a little bit more. 10th house lord in the 5th house, the creative, the artistic, the mind, the intellect. The 5th house also rules the mind. So Justin has a very active mind with Jupiter in its own sign, conjunct Mercury, conjunct Venus. I mean, Mercury-Venus conjunctions are great for creative writing. They're great for artistic talent. They're great for ideas as well, too. So he has an abundance of creative ideas in this lifetime. He's a gifted writer. He's a gifted speaker. He's a gifted artist. He's a gifted performer, also with that strong 3rd house, which we'll get into next. But also he's really good at teaching as well, too, and he is this philosopher in this lifetime as well, too. The first time I saw Justin Baldoni, I was like, this man has been a philosopher in all his past lives, which is a funny thing. I won't get too into this, but I can kind of tell people's past lives when I look at them, which is just a weird thing that I'm not gonna explain too much in this video. But when I saw Justin Baldoni, the first thing I thought, I was like, he's been a philosopher in many of his past lives. So we see Jupiter in its own sign of Sagittarius in the 5th house. Jupiter rules philosophy, spirituality, wisdom, teaching, guidance, and it's in that 5th house. So Justin Baldoni is an amazing artist. He's amazing with all things creative. He's written many books. That's also the 5th house. The 5th house rules publishing and writing, okay? Jupiter, Mercury rules writing as well, too. But also he's kind of this philosophical teacher as well, too, in this lifetime, okay? If someone has a strong Jupiter and it's conjunct other benefics and it's in the 5th house of the mind and purva punya, good past life karma, they're going to have a lot of good energy when they go towards philosophical, spiritual pursuits and anything that's teaching or sort of raising consciousness as well, too. Okay, so he's an artist, he's a writer, he's a performer, but he's also kind of this philosophical, spiritual guide as well, too, in this lifetime. And if you watch his videos and his TED Talks, all that sort of stuff, he's very much that philosophical, sort of Jupiterian type of person. Okay. I have Jupiter in Sagittarius as well, too. So I'm Jupiter recognizes Jupiter, baby. Whenever I see someone with a strong Jupiter, in real life or actors or whatever it is, I'm always I see you. I see your strong Jupiter. It's all about philosophy and spirituality and guiding people and trying to open people up to different viewpoints and perspectives as well, too. Okay. So the downside of having such a strong Jupiter and so much energy active in the 5th house, Jupiter-Mercury conjunction, is that it's going to cause this energy of very strong beliefs, very strong viewpoints, very strong visions, very strong ideologies, very strong philosophies in this lifetime, okay? Because Jupiter in Sagittarius and Sagittarius planets in itself is sort of this energy where they really want people to follow their viewpoints, their beliefs, and sort of get people in on their ideologies, okay? So that's a strong Jupiter. That's a strong Jupiter conjunct Mercury. That's a strong Jupiter in the 5th house of ideas and the mental and the creative. So we can already see this theme unraveling in this chart of this sort of energy for Justin where he has such creative ideas all the time that he probably can't really shut his mind off very often with such an active 5th house of the mind and the intellect, especially with Jupiter conjunct Mercury, but also it gives this sort of theme where he might want to project his, ideas, ideologies, philosophies onto other people so much, and it can be overwhelming for people at times. So one thing that might have happened as he was going about his, filmmaking and all that sort of stuff is he probably had weird, unorthodox ideas, and people were kind of like, I don't know about that. And he was probably like, no, we need to try it. We need to do it this way. And that was causing friction. Okay. With such a strong fifth house, with such a strong Jupiter, there's this really strong belief in their own ideas, their own viewpoints. And one of my first Vedic astrology teachers told us, like, if you see a lot of strong Jupiter, Sagittarius energy, or strong ninth house energy, they really feel like they want their viewpoints to be seen and heard, and they feel like it's sort of their way or the highway, right? And I've seen that. I have absolutely seen that with people who have very strong Jupiter, very strong Sagittarius energy. 100%. So we see that theme going on. And then another theme that we see going on is really powerful for children and investments as well, too. So what I do is I always analyze charts, and then I research the person after, and I looked up, I was like, did Justin Baldoni do any sort of investments? Okay. Justin Baldoni has invested in Wayfair Studios, an independent production company, in 2019, and also it says Baldoni and someone else co-founded this production company to create impactful media and entertainment that highlights connection and social change. So it received a $125 million investment from his business partner and his wife, Jessica, to support the company's growth. Okay, and then he has this nonprofit organization. So guys, like, I'm telling you, it gives me chills. Like, it literally gives me chills as a professional astrologer to be able to see the specificity of things and see such specific, accurate things, okay? So if Justin was a client of mine, I would tell him, like, you have an ability to really have great investments in this lifetime. People will invest into your company and into your business with such a strong fifth house of investments, right? And he just had this great company that got $125 million invested into it. That is a strong fifth house of investments. It's wild, okay? And also the fifth house is children. So if someone has a really powerful fifth house, he's going to have a really great relationship with his children. And we see 3 planets in the fifth house. He can have 3 children. He currently has 2 children. So he might even have 1 more with those 3 planetary energies in the fifth house, okay? It's pretty rare to see a chart in this day and age where it's going to be so benefic for children, but he has one of those charts where I would tell him, like, have, as many children because you have such a powerful fifth house. All right, so he's already had all those themes of that powerful, powerful fifth house. He's an artist, he's an entrepreneur, he's creative, he has 2 children, he's very connected to his children, he's a teacher, he's had great investments, okay? That is all of that benefic energy in the fifth house. That is what that is all about. So also, we have to understand that when a house is so powerful in one house, it's going to directly oppose whatever's opposite of it as well too, right? So because his fifth house is so strong, it's coming up as his 11th house being really strong too, because all of those planets go onto the 11th, okay? And the 11th house is groups, organizations, friendships, connections, and large financial gains as well too. So because he has such a benefic, influential fifth house, he also has a really benefic and strong 11th house as well too. So he has, an amazing energy for powerful people. He knows a lot of powerful people. He's really well connected. He can have great financial gains with the 11th house. Also, he's very connected to groups and organizations, right? And what did I just say? He started some sort of nonprofit group and organization. All right, that's all that influence onto the 11th house. And again, because his Jupiter is so strong, Jupiter is the energy of wanting to give away and give back and be sort of this, justice-seeking type of person in this lifetime. So if someone has a really strong Jupiter, especially conjuncting all these benefics, they're going to want to give back in some way, especially to groups, organizations with that aspect on the 11th house. And he started a nonprofit organization about being of service, giving back, okay? So that is what that is all about. All right, so let's now go over to his sun in the 6th house of Capricorn. So this is very, very interesting because he does have some afflictions onto his sun. So he has sun in the 6th house, which is actually his chart ruler. So his whole chart gets ruled by the 6th house, right? Why? Because he's a Leo ascendant. Leo Lagna or ascendant is ruled by the sun. So then we hop over to his sun in the 6th house of Capricorn, and it means that his 1st house lord is in the 6th house. So 6th house rules daily work, routines, fitness, health, litigation, and the legal system as well too, which is very interesting with everything going on, right? Which there's actually a very specific reason why this is all active in his Dasha sequence. We'll get into that in a little bit. But whenever someone has sun or a malefic in the 6th house, it's interesting. It causes like some issues, yes, for the 6th house, but they actually say that malefics do well in the Upachaya houses. So they get better over time, and it causes this sort of strength and resilience and an ability to overcome or defeat their quote-unquote enemies in this lifetime, okay? But we do see some afflictions on that 6th house sun, which we'll get into in a second. So because his whole chart is ruled by the 6th house, he's also very interested in health, healing, wellness, improvement, okay? 6th house is the house of improvement and service. So you'll see when someone has a strong 6th house, their whole chart being ruled by the 6th house with the sun in the 6th house, which is the seat of the soul, right? The sun is that like soul planet. It will show that someone is very interested in all things that have to do with improvement and health and healing and wellness and fitness and getting better, right? The 6th house is the house of getting better and improving. So let's look into Justin Baldoni on health and improvement, see what comes up. All right, Justin Baldoni has spoken about a number of health and improvement topics. I mean, you can't make this stuff up, guys. Okay. He says he's struggled with body dysmorphia. Yes, that's that afflicted 6th house with the sun. How he's worked to unlearn masculine ideals that have kept him from feeling connected. That is the afflicted sun. Sun is that masculine energy. It's the ego. It's the confidence, okay? Baldoni has spoken about his struggles with anxiety and how he discovered that it was linked to perfectionism. He also believes in embracing imperfections and making us more relatable and human. Yes, he's spoken about masculinity. That's that afflicted sun. And he's written books on how to help young men express their emotions and how he's struggled with anxiety as well too. Okay, so clearly that 6th house of health and improvement and getting better is strong in his life, right? He's written books on how to help people improve. He's tried to improve himself in this lifetime. That is the 1st house lord in the 6th house. That is the sun in the 6th house of Capricorn. It's all about improvement. It's all about getting better with time. That is a malefic in the Upachaya house. All right. And if we want to get even more specific and follow dispositors, his 6th house lord is in the 3rd house. So he's literally written about improvement and getting better. 6th house of improvement gets disposited by the 3rd house of writing. Okay? And also, this is very, very specific, but one of my Vedic astrology teachers, James Braha, told us that if you see connections between the 6th house and the 3rd house, you're going to get healing abilities in this lifetime. So Justin is also very focused on healing, helping consciousness, trying to help people get better. All right. Now, because we do have afflictions onto that sun in the 6th house, we're also going to get issues around confidence and identity and healthy masculine energy as well too. So watch this, guys. So the afflictions in the 6th house might not be obvious, like from first looking at his chart, right? But this is why aspects are so important. So 10th house Rahu aspects houses that are 5 and 9 away. So we see Rahu in the 10th that goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, aspecting a 2nd house. So that gives heightened money and financial security. 6, 7, 8, 9. Rahu is on his sun, okay? And then we see Mars, another malefic, going 1, 2, 3, 4 onto his sun as well too. And Mars is 13 degrees, his sun is 10 degrees. So that's a really, really tight aspect of 10 degrees to 13 degrees. That's about 3-degree orb conjunction, okay? Rahu is 21 degrees, the sun is 10 degrees. So that Mars energy is more potent. and more powerful on the sun, but we do get Rahu and Mars on the sun. Now, Rahu with the sun is going to cause ego issues and identity issues in this lifetime. The way that we see Rahu in Vedic astrology is that Rahu is something that has not been properly developed in previous lifetimes, okay? I have Rahu conjunct my sun, and I know like that Rahu sun energy very well, all right? It causes these extremes in confidence, and then it causes these lows in confidence. So it's kind of this like imbalanced energy around confidence, self-esteem, and ego, all right? And I remember I was watching this analysis on like the Rahu sun conjunction by another Vedic astrologer once, and he was basically saying that when you see Rahu with the sun, the person hasn't mastered healthy ego or healthy leadership yet in this lifetime, so they have to really learn how to unravel that, okay? So when we see Rahu on the sun, it causes ego issues, it causes high self-esteem and then low self-esteem. It causes this imbalance with someone's ego, sense of self, and identity. So it will cause a lot of identity issues, all right? So that's that sort of ego confidence issue that's coming up in his work life, because that's in the 10th house. Rahu's in the 10th. It's aspecting his 6th house of work and daily routines and enemies as well too, okay? Then we get Mars going 1, 2, 3, 4. Aspecting that sun. Mars sort of agitates that energy and causes even more of that ego issue, more of that anger, aggression. So based on that Mars aspect on the sun, based on that Rahu aspect on the sun, we are getting this energy of some ego problem that can come up for him in his work life as well too, okay? 6th house can also show like our coworkers, the people we're working with, and the house of enemies, right? And so then we get some afflictions onto that 6th house. And when we get afflictions onto a house, it will show that that house is going to have some issues throughout that person's lifetime, okay? So yes, he has a strong 6th house to overcome obstacles, overcome health issues, and heal, but also because we do have some malefic influence, we're also going to get some issues around enemies, coworkers, around people, you know, thinking that he has some sort of ego problem as well too, okay? So that's exactly what happened, right? He had an issue with a coworker, and it was probably very much connected to his ego and his ability to maybe not fully understand healthy leadership with Rahu on the sun, right? Rahu is the energy of something we have not mastered. We don't fully understand it. And it's on the sun, which is leadership and ego and confidence, okay? So this is a chart where he has to learn to develop a healthy sense of ego, a healthy sense of confidence, and a healthy sense of leadership in this lifetime, okay? That's that afflicted sun. He is definitely able to be a very powerful leader with Rahu in the 10th. His 10th house lord is so strong. Jupiter is strong. Chandra Mangal yoga gives amazing energy for business endeavors. It's a powerful chart through and through. But here's the thing about a powerful chart as well is when that power is misused, it's not always great, right? So I would say his biggest issue is his ego problem, his leadership issues that can come up at times, and his ability or his feeling of always wanting to be right as well too. Okay. So it's probably a scenario in which he could have just like backed down or worked on his expression, worked on his confidence, worked on his speech. Something like that would have helped him a lot in this whole scenario, all right? It's because also Ketu's been transing his 2nd house of speech, which we'll get into in a little bit. Okay. Now, let's hop over to his 3rd house. So, 3rd house is the house of performing, willpower, strength, writing, communication. He has Moon, Mars, Saturn, all in the 3rd house. Okay. So, Moon conjunct Mars in a 3-degree orb of conjunction creates a Chandra Mangal yoga, which means business success in the house that it connects to. So, it's in the 3rd house of expression, communication, writing, publishing, teaching. He has a really successful podcast as well too, and he's done TED Talks. That's the 3rd house of teaching, expression, the voice, writing, podcasting, all of those themes. But also the 3rd house is the house of the arts. So his 2 houses of the arts are very lit up and very active in this chart. All right. He has the Chandramangal Yoga in Swati Nakshatra. Swati rules the ability to sway people and to speak in a way that is very powerful. Swati Nakshatra also connects to business endeavors, okay? So, this is a very, very powerful chart for business, creativity, acting, artistic endeavors, writing, speaking, teaching, philosophical musings, health, healing, and wellness. It's all there, guys. It's all so obvious, and it's just right there. And the Chandramangal Yoga is going to give business success when he goes towards third house themes, right? What is the third house? Again, writing, speaking, communication, performing, willpower, strength, acting, okay? So he has a really powerful chart, again, for all of the things that he's already done in this lifetime. We do see Saturn there, which is very interesting. You know, Saturn does pretty well in Libra. And it's interesting to see Saturn, Mars, and the moon all in the third house because it's giving some mixed results, right? Whenever we see two malefics and then a benefic, it's going to cause some mixed results. So I think the biggest issue with that Saturn with the moon is going to be depression, anxiety, self-esteem issues, and self-confidence, okay? And if you look up Justin Baldoni, let's look at this again. Justin Baldoni, anxiety, depression. That's Saturn on the moon. Justin Baldoni has spoken about his struggles with mental health, including anxiety, ADHD, and depression. Okay. I mean, it's just ridiculous. It's like you can just see someone's whole life story, and it's all going to be confirmed when you Google it after. Okay. So that's Saturn on the moon. Mars moon is also an energy where someone has very impulsive reactions to things. So you'll find with a moon Mars conjunction, it's great for business success. It's a Chandramangal Yoga. My teacher, Joni, always said, you know, Chandramangal Yoga never fails. They're going to have business success. So you'll see that a lot with business success and entrepreneurs. But the moon Mars does cause issues around the impulsivity and the emotional reactions that can get triggered as well too. So that's that moon Mars conjunction. Saturn there, Saturn on the moon causes depression. There's mental health struggles that he has dealt with and spoken about as well too. Okay. And Saturn is also aspecting all these planets, right? So Saturn's on Venus, Saturn's on Jupiter, Saturn's on Mercury, which again, because his fifth house is so potent, so powerful, so benefic, it's just giving more of like a drive there and more of an ability to work hard as well too. So malefics in an Upachaya house, hardworking, Saturn in the third, Chandramangal Yoga in the third house. The third house is power, resilience, and strength. So he has one of those charts where he's very, very resilient, and he's able to get through any sort of experience he goes through. All right, that's that Upachaya in the sixth. That is Mars, Moon in the third. Third house is willpower and strength as well, too. All right, but again, we see those identity, ego issues, and some struggles with mental health as well with Saturn on the moon. And what's very interesting is I actually just saw right now, he says that he has been struggling with ADHD as well too. Guys, that's all that energy in the fifth house of the mind, okay? Did I not say earlier his mind is going to be constantly active? That is quite literally how we would define and connect that to ADHD, right? With such a strong fifth house, someone's mind is constantly going, okay? Constant ideas, constant creative ideas. It never ends, okay? And then Jupiter-Mercury conjunction can show issues with sleeping as well, too, because they're up so late thinking about everything. They have so many ideas. That is ADHD in its essence, okay? All right, so now let us go. Oh, this is one other thing that I find so eerily accurate. His wife, and I found this so interesting. So his wife is actually an actress and an artist as well, too. And his Darakarka, or his indicator of the spouse, is Venus. Venus rules the arts, all right? Venus goes into his fifth house. Fifth house rules the arts. So his Darakarka shows that his wife is an artist, and she's in all fields, creative and artistic. So that is that Darakarka in the fifth house, Venus in the fifth house. And then his seventh house lord is, so his seventh house is Aquarius, which means it gets disposited by Saturn. Seventh house lord is in the third house. Third house is the other house of the arts. So his spouse is an artist, quite literally. And then in his D9 Navamsha, his seventh house lord also goes into the fifth house, which is the house of the arts. So it's just, guys, it's just all like so eerily spot on all the time in Vedic astrology. All right. So that is unraveling Justin's natal chart and what's going on there. He's, so powerful for the arts, creative ideas. He has such a potent fifth house. Does he have ego issues? Yes. Does he have issues around confidence and leadership at times? Yes. Does he have such an overly active mind? Yes. Is he insanely creative and, comes up with amazing ideas? Yes. Is he a writer and a philosopher and someone who's here to heal and sort of uplift consciousness? Yes. Okay, it's all those things. It's not one, it's not the other, it's all of it. All right. And if you want to be accurate in astrology, you have to see the whole spectrum of everything, right? It's not just like, oh my God, he's amazing and he's perfect and he's such a powerful artist. It's also about understanding Rahu on the sun, Mars on the sun, right? That's causing these like identity ego issues as well too. And it's also causing issues around the workplace of sixth house of enemies and work. And we have malefic influence on that sixth house, all right? Okay. So also his Atmakaraka is Saturn. So his Atmakaraka is Saturn in the third house. So whenever someone has Atmakaraka Saturn, they feel very responsible in this lifetime. They feel like they have a duty or some sort of strong purpose that they have to get to. And they feel like they want to, help and have some sort of bigger sort of purpose as well too. And also it's in his third house of the arts and writing and creativity and performing. So yeah, that's been his whole life. Is that Saturn Atmakaraka in the third house. Okay. So now there's obviously way more we could analyze in his Vedic chart, but I want to get now into some transit and Dasha analysis. Okay. So he's in a Saturn moon Dasha, which started for him in 2023. So he's been in a Saturn Dasha since 2012, which is very, very interesting because when you enter the Dasha, that activates the D9 Navamsha 7th house. You can get married. It can trigger marriage, right? Because the D9 Navamsha is the chart of marriage. And if you go into the planets of that house, the first or the 7th house planetary energy of a chart, which the D9 Navamsha connects to the 7th house, you can get married. And so he went into a Saturn Dasha in 2012, and then he got married in 2013, so a year after that marriage chart got active in his dashas. So yeah, and also his 7th house lord is Saturn. Okay, so it means that his 7th house gets disposited by that energy. So it means that when he goes into a Saturn dasha, marriage gets very triggered in his chart, which did happen. Okay, so now this is very interesting. So in his chart, Saturn, let's see what houses Saturn rules. Okay, so for Leo ascendant, Saturn rules the 7th house and the 6th house. Okay, what is the 7th house? The 7th house is relationships, marriage, the public, business partnerships. What is the 6th house? The 6th house is daily work, service, healing, litigation issues, and issues within the legal system and enemies. Okay. I mean, guys, you really can't make this stuff up. So he's in a Saturn dasha. 7th house is active of business partnerships, the way that he comes across to the public, his relationships, all of that. 6th house is active, so his relationships are having some sort of 6th house energy active in it as well too. So what happens, he is seen in the public with a legal issue, 6th house, and an enemy in the workplace. Like, come on, it's crazy. Okay, but let's further analyze. So he's in a Saturn moon dasha, so he's in a Saturn main cycle, and then he's in a moon bhukti ruling planetary cycle. Saturn is in his 3rd house, moon is in his 3rd house. So 3rd house is writing, performing, creativity, the arts. Obviously, he's been in this Saturn dasha, and when he entered the Saturn dasha, he got famous for performing, the writing, creativity, the arts. It's ridiculous. So that's all super active. And then his 3rd house lord just happens to get disposited by his 5th house, which is that really powerful 5th house of the arts and creativity and good luck and purva punya, past life karma. So he enters the Saturn Dasha. He gets famous because of the arts, the creative, his past life karma, all of that sort of stuff is unraveling. Okay. Now, what's happening is he is in a Saturn moon dasha. So Saturn conjuncting the moon is not necessarily a favorable dasha sequence. The reason being is that Saturn moon will show some need to go deep into the psyche, unravel some deep psychological issues. It can cause depression, it can cause isolation, it can cause anxiety. All right. And his Saturn is conjunct his moon in his natal chart. So it's creating that energy becoming very active where it's already natally heavy for him emotionally. And also the moon is the masses, right? The moon is also connected to women. So when we see a Saturn main dasha and then a moon bhukti ruling cycle, it's causing restrictions or some sort of Saturn karmic theme around the public, around women, around, his mind and his psychological nature. All right. And it creates a 1-7 count in the natal chart as well, too. Why? Because Saturn is conjunct the moon. So when you go into the main dasha and the bhukti ruling planet, you always count how far Saturn goes to the moon. So Saturn is 1 away from the moon because they're in a conjunction. And then that means that it's creating a 1-7 relationship in the dasha sequence. All right. Guys, this is very high level Vedic astrology, so don't worry if this doesn't make any sense to you guys. Don't even worry about it, but just know that we always count from like the main dasha to the bhukti ruling planet and see how far they go from each other. So if it's a conjunction, that means it's creating a 1-7 relationship in the dasha sequence. Okay? So a 1-7 relationship between Saturn and the moon would show some sort of, axis point between himself and the public image and his relationships. All right. It's in the nature of Saturn to restrict. It's in the nature of Saturn to cause some sort of karmic issue, causing a karmic issue with women around the public, around the masses, and around his psyche and his mental health. All right. Best believe that this has been affecting him psychologically. How could it not, right? Of course it is. And Saturn moon is creating that sort of depressive aspect as well, too. So we might see him come out down the line saying that this period was very depressing for him. He felt very heavy emotionally. That's going to be that Saturn moon energy. All right. So that's already eerily accurate, right? His 7th house of relationships in the public and business partnerships. And then the 6th house is lit up in this dasha sequence because Saturn rules the 7th and the 6th. 6th house is enemies, 6th house is co-workers, 6th house is legality and issues with the legal system. Okay, but let's take it a step further. Okay, so when we're in a Saturn dasha, we really want to see where Saturn is transiting because the main dasha ruling planet of any dasha sequence is the most important transit in that dasha sequence time period. So, the most important transit for Justin Baldoni in this Saturn transit is going to be Saturn in his 7th house right now because Saturn is currently in Aquarius and it's going to move in about 3 months' time from now, but right now it's still in his 7th house. So it's causing restrictions, karmic issues around the public, around, the way he shows up in the world, around his relationships, around his business partnerships. Best believe that when he's in a Saturn 7th house dasha and this whole thing has gone on, it's restricted his business partnerships. It's caused karmic issues around people that he's worked with, right? It was said that I think it was like the co-host of his podcast left the podcast. That is Saturn causing disconnection or karmic issues in the 7th house of business partnerships, right? It's like, that's so obvious. That's so clear. Okay. And Saturn the 7th, best believe it's going to cause some issues in his marriage, okay? So we see Saturn in his 7th and Rahu's in his 8th house. Rahu's about to transit his 7th and then Saturn's about to hop into his 8th house. So his 7th house and 8th house are going to be active with some malefic influence. 8th house is that energy that can cause, some sort of legal settlements, issues within relationships. So we're definitely going to see his relationship and his marriage get tested over these next couple years. 100%. Okay, so he does have to watch out for that. I'm not saying that he's going to get divorced. I'm not going to predict a divorce, but I am saying that his relationship and marriage is going to be very, very tested over these next couple years as well too. There might be some big change in their dynamic with Saturn in the 7th, and then Saturn about to move in the 8th, and then Rahu about to move in the 7th house. 100%. Okay, so Saturn's in his 7th. What is it aspecting? 1, 2, 3, his 9th house, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and his 4th house. So it's also causing some restrictive. So with Saturn's aspect onto the 9th house and the 4th house, also causing some restrictions around 9th house energy, which is the legal system, the justice system, karma there, and then the 4th house of home and family as well too. So he's also going to see some karmic issues coming up in the home life, the family life, around the marriage, and in the legal system as well too. So that's Saturn's aspect onto the 9th and aspect onto the 4th house as well too. All right, so then this is really, really, really important, guys. So Rahu right now is in Pisces, so Rahu is transiting his 8th house. Okay, so that puts the nodal axis points with Rahu in the 8th and Ketu in the 2nd. So the 8th house is the house of a few things, well, many things. The 8th house is the house of transformation. The 8th house is the house of psychology. The 8th house is the house of, going deep into some sort of intense transformational experience. The 8th house also rules a fall from grace, and the 8th house also rules a scandal that can connect to sexuality. So Rahu's in his 8th, giving a heightened energy and a karmic theme around a fall from grace, a scandal, his connection to sexuality, and, some sort of intense psychological transformational experience with Rahu in the 8th. All right. And then that puts Ketu in the 2nd. So it's also financial karma, right? It's going to show some sort of issue that's going on for him financially, right? Ketu in the 2nd can create a void or some sort of stop or loss to his financial abundance. Rahu in the 8th can show that he's giving a lot of his money into something connected to the 8th house, which is a scandal, which is, a sexual scandal, quite literally. Also, whenever the nodal axis goes through the 8th house, 2nd house point, and we see Ketu in the 2nd, someone has to be careful, yes, of their finances and losing some sort of important financial deal. Interestingly enough, I saw the same axis point of the nodes going through the 8th house, 2nd house axis when Drake had his big fall from grace, and then he had to start losing some deals, and then he had to pay for lawyers. This is what is going to happen when that 8th house, 2nd house axis gets lit up. If someone is doing something negative or they're not acting in high moral or something is going on, they can definitely lose money with Ketu in the 2nd, creating a void in the finances, and then Rahu in the 8th can show some sort of big scandal or some sort of big psychological transformational experience. And that's exactly what's happening, right? Whenever I have clients who have Ketu in the 2nd house transit, I always tell them to watch their speech during that year-long transit because the 2nd house is the speech and the expression. And with Ketu there can just be some issues or maybe things aren't coming out in the right way. So it also would predict that during this transit, what was happening was Justin was probably trying to express himself on the set or with his coworkers, and it wasn't coming across in the right way. So if he had come to me as a client for a yearly chart reading, I would have told him to watch his speech and his expression over this year because things are not going to come out in the right way or they can be misconstrued. All right, and because of the nature of Rahu in the 8th house transit, it's giving some sort of big scandal, fall from grace, connected to sexuality as well, too. So that's quite literally what has been happening, to a T. That is it. Okay, so interestingly enough, transit-wise, Rahu is about to hop into his 7th house, and then Ketu is about to go on to his ascendant. So Ketu on the ascendant will show an energy of retreat, isolation, and withdrawn energy from the world and the public in some way. And then Rahu is going to go into a 7th, so his marriage or his relationship can have some karmic issues come up, but also the 7th house is business, partnerships, relationships, and our connection to the public. So he's about to go through this karmic unraveling of how he comes across to the world versus how he comes across in his relationships, how much he's giving to himself versus how much he's putting into his relationships. That's going to be his whole karmic theme for 2025 into 2026. Okay. When Ketu goes onto his ascendant, we might see that he has some sort of retreat or like withdrawal from the world. Maybe he's going to go on like some spiritual retreat. Maybe he's going to go on to some sort of travels. You might see that he's taking a break from acting. I don't know. With Ketu on the ascendant, he's definitely going to hide away or go within or heal a little bit this next year. Rahu on the 7th is going to cause this energy of maybe he's coming across as too much to other people with Rahu in the 7th house as well. And his marriage is definitely going to have some, shift or change to the dynamic in some regard with Rahu in the 7th as well too. All right, so we're probably going to see him retreat and go within over this next year. And then Jupiter is going to go into his 11th, which is very interesting because when Jupiter enters his 11th house and aspects all these planets, his natal Jupiter, his Venus, his Mercury, he is going to have some sort of like blessed, protected energy because of all of those planets aspecting his natal planet. So I do think that whatever happens in the court case or going forward, it's not going to be awful. Like he has some protection with that Jupiter energy in the 11th aspecting all his planets. Do I think it's going to change his public image? Yes, with Ketu about to go on his ascendant, Rahu in his 7th house, 100%. It's going to change his whole, sort of identity. He's going to go through some sort of identity issue or loss with Ketu on the ascendant. But with Jupiter in the 11th, I do think a lot of his friends and a lot of his community is also going to show up and show out for him because the 11th house is the house of friendships, groups, communities. Jupiter, the great benefic, is going there and aspecting all his natal planets in the 5th house. So I do think he's going to have some sort of scenario where maybe friends from the past or communities or groups from the past either like stand up for him or, tell people, oh, Justin's been a great activist or a great person or things like that are going to start coming about when Jupiter does start transiting that 11th house of groups and friendships and organizations. And again, it's going to aspect all these planets in the 5th house. So we see some interesting mixed things going on, right? He's going to have identity issues, his connection to the public, his marriage is going to be tested, but also I do think a lot of his friends and communities and groups are going to really start showing up for him in like 2025 to 2026. So people that he's been loyal to, his past friends, there's going to be benefic influence there. And again, with so much Jupiter aspecting that 5th house, I just feel like he is going to have some protection going forward in the case or the legal system. I'm not going to say that he's going to completely win or that he's not going to get backlash because Ketu on the ascendant is definitely going to cause, some issues with his connection to the public. But I do think he is going to have some blessings there. And I do think he's going to have a lot of people that actually stand up for him when Jupiter goes into that 11th house as well, too. All right, and then it's going to be interesting as well when he goes into a Saturn-Mars Dasha Bhukti cycle because Mars is Yogakaraka for Leo ascendant, meaning it's a really powerful planet. So I would predict for Justin going into like 2025 and forward, he is going to be able to come back from this because Mars is that Yogakaraka. He has such a powerful, potent chart for coming out of things, going through things, and coming out on the other side. So he's definitely going to be fine within like the next, I would say, 2 to 3 years and going forward. But we are going to see in this next year a lot of identity issues, loss of who he thinks he is, some mental health struggles, and some losses financially, 100% with Ketu being in his 2nd house of finances. All right, guys. So that was our deep dive into Justin's Vedic astrological chart and his Dasha sequence and his transits. As a professional astrologer, I'm still always shocked by astrology. It never fails to just amaze me how accurate of a system Vedic astrology is. So really a beautiful system. If you want to be a great astrologer, I personally am such an advocate for studying Vedic astrology over Western astrology because I do feel like it's a system that allows you to go really, really deep because of the amount of knowledge that we have available and that we can access in Vedic astrology. Like, we would never be able to get all of this without the Dasha system, without the Dasha sequences, without the Bhukti ruling planet and the counts and all of this amazing stuff that we really do have in Vedic astrology that's just lacking in Western astrology. All right, I hope you guys enjoyed this first in-depth chart analysis of 2025. Let me know down below if you guys have any specific suggestions for videos going forward, and I hope everyone is doing well and staying safe and grounded for this crazy beginning to this year. All right, I'm sending all the love, all the best vibes, and we will talk soon. All right, much love. Bye, guys.